Good afternoon. For all you hardcore students here, join us during midterms here. So thank you for attending here. Unfortunately, we'll have it filmed for our podcast for all those who wouldn't give up their study time to come and hear this. We're very fortunate to have truly an operator and an operator's view in the title. Colonel retired P.J. Dermer is a veteran of the U.S. Army, a veteran of many different organizations, including the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment in the early days in the 80s, and flying all kinds of aircraft, the Little Birds, to Blackhawks. He's also a foreign area officer and a specialist in the Middle East, and he probably most importantly to all of you, somebody to look up to, is that he's a graduate of our program. So he is an alum, and he's going to do what Professor Hoffman, tells us that we do, and that's to show us the nexus of theory and practice. He has gone through this program, and he has truly put it into practice. He has spent a lot of time in the Middle East, and he's going to talk about an operator's view. He's also worked in the White House. And I think the way I would sum up PJ's experience as an operator and as a national security practitioner, because I think that he has the credentials as a national security practitioner, but he is one that you don't see in the news. He's been the one that has been out there from embassies to remote areas, and again, as I said, to the White House, practicing national security and contributing in ways that you read about in books, but you don't see names. And he's one of those unnamed people in the trenches that are making it happen and contributing to national security in ways I think that all of us, all of you in particular, will aspire to. So he's going to give us his perspectives. He's going to be, I think, very direct, provocative, and I know he will look forward to taking your questions, which are always blunt, direct, and provocative as well. So with that, PJ, welcome.
Can you hear me okay? Do I need to adjust the mic at all? Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah. What I'd like to do is just read some prepared notes in order to guide my thoughts, and then I'll sit down here and grab a soda and welcome your challenges. Okay. If you don't challenge me, then I'm going to go see the boss as to what's up with the program. All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. It's really great to be here. I applaud the outreach to former Georgetown SSP, as you call it now. All throughout my notes I had NSS, and I've just changed that, SSP, graduates, military or otherwise. I graduated from the program when it was a separate school in the Georgetown system. It wasn't under MSFS at the time, it was NSS. So when I applied to come to Georgetown, I applied to both MSFS and NSS. That's how we did at the time. At that time, many of our classes were in the Pentagon, which afforded us close interaction with the practitioners steeped in the nation's complex events of the day. I thought this was a very unique circumstance in an academic education, and I've touted it since whenever asked about my Georgetown experience. We had Pentagon badges and a lot of nighttime classes sitting in there. My intent today is to provide some thought-provoking analysis given my experiences over the last 20 years from graduation, and then how Georgetown's SSP program uniquely fits into the equation to remedy what I see as an uncertain future in U.S. policy efforts. Since graduation, my experience is at the forefront of more than one of our nation's critical foreign policy efforts lead me to assess that the nation has a critical national gap between the stated vision, no matter how well intended, and the end state that ultimately results on the ground. While either in Washington at senior levels or forward in the complex and deadly frays of Iraq, Middle East peace, Afghanistan, or Africa, I have asked myself many times over the years, is this really the best that we, America, can do? Am I missing something ultimately about the way the nation conducts the important business of national security? Put more practically, should not the U.S. have something better to show in support of its national interests for the resources spent and the lives lost over the last 2 decades? I think we would all agree that the answer is yes. but current realities highlight this is not the case. Tellingly, international interlocutors I know ask the same questions. Many view our efforts, given directions taken, and their resultant negative outcomes, frankly, conspiratorial. In their words, America is the world power, and therefore surely capable of all things. For some reason, however, she decides to feign otherwise, which, as a world power, is her business. This understood, why then does she continue along paths that are detrimental to her interests? We are confused by this behavior. Accordingly, we have our own interests to pursue while America decides when it is important and what success. After years at the forefront, I am having a hard time convincing international interlocutors that I know that they have it wrong, or at least I hope they do. My theme today then focuses on several reasons why our well-intended visions are not linked to positive, tangible results on the ground in support of our national interests. The reasons are many and complex. It's a full course, it's a full semester. But today I want to highlight three that I see, three important shortcomings that, in my opinion, lay the conditions for failure before things even get started. All three are macro or system weaknesses, I would call them. The first is the nation has a critical gap at the operational level. By operational level, I am referring to the level that lies between strategy and tactics in the traditional hierarchy of the levels of warfare, which I'm sure you learned here. By practice and education, I add vision into this hierarchy above strategy. Vision, strategy, operations, tactics. So what do I mean by weakness at the operational level? Why is it important? Well, we all have lots of ideas, visions if you will, and purported strategies floating all over this town, in government and out. That's what this town is all about. Many are from media personalities and think tank pundits that consistently try and sell their ideas for myriad purposes, including personal aggrandizement. Okay. The news shows and boutique websites are full of them. A viable two-state solution for Middle East peace. A better road for democracy in Iraq and Afghanistan. How to defeat ISIS. Or finally ending world hunger. Many ideas are not bad ones or ill-intended, but lofty ideas and bumper sticker strategies simply don't make things happen no matter how well-intended. What the nation does not have is a body of professionals that can readily implement an idea from the grand to the just plain common sense. To take it all the way from a far vision, through development of a sound strategy, to operational implementation, to engaging the right tactics, including use of qualified personnel on the ground, all the way through. The missing link within this paradigm, in my opinion, is the operational level. Moreover, this shortcoming is not new. It's not new. It has been this way for a very long time and continues at present, making it all the more puzzling to myself and my international friends, given our democratically based myriad education systems and training institutions. It doesn't make sense. To support and clarify my assertion, I will provide an example from another field to highlight my point. That of the layered relationships in the construction business when building a home. When embarking on building a home, we begin with a vision of what we want, or rather what we think we want. Whether it's 4 bedrooms and 3 baths, a wooden cabin look, a master bath with a jacuzzi and steam, a basement with a pool and a sports bar, or a mountain A-frame with lots of open space and windows with breathtaking views. Visions of what we want. Everyone wants all those things. We take this vision to the strategic level, to an architect that is chartered to put our words and thoughts down on paper in a clear and concise manner. All right, tell me about your vision. What is it you want here? This in of itself is not easy. There's a lot of back and forth querying as to exactly what we mean, adding lines, checking specifications, moving lines again, and making everything to scale. After all, the product must be readable by others, understandable by others, i.e. the builders, and it must be in concert with all legal building codes and regulations. Nothing is freelanced by the architect. Something simply added before or after the fact is not done. It is all connected. It must be or will not be a practical, realistic demonstration, or a legally viable effort. Normally one has a general cost basis in mind prior to putting ink to paper, but the architect does not delve too deep into this part of the equation. He usually gives a ballpark reality check based on a project's simplicity or difficulty, and similar work done in the same geographic locale, for instance. Once the architect gets the green light, which takes time, the next formal step is finding a builder, the operational level, to execute the vision via the legally correct and industry standard architectural drawings now in hand. The first thing the builder will do is look at the drawing for the basic practicalities necessary to accomplish the project. He will focus on three main standards: cost, quality, and time. More importantly, he will inform you that no matter what is on the drawings and no matter what you envisioned, you will never get all three of those on an equal basis. Something will always have to be sacrificed. If the project is complicated or held up, it will cost more. If quality is an important priority, it will cost more and take more time. If you want it cheaper or faster, quality will be sacrificed. If you have a lot of time, costs can be mitigated to an extent. Take too long, and costs begin to add up. A good builder will try and match what he sees to what you envisioned and bring the costs into plain view. The depicted cathedral ceiling in the main bathroom will be very difficult to construct and require specialists. But there are only a few in the area and they're very busy. We have to call one in from the outside, he will cost more. The master porch to be connected to the kitchen will likely sit over a county easement, county right-of-way. It will be hard to get a permit for this, but it could be constructed at your own risk. Do you envision pressure-treated wood or PVC for the outside trim? PVC, plastic, is 3 times as expensive. When there is a disconnect or alternative consideration after discussing with the builder, something either has to be adjusted in one's vision and expectations, and then in the architectural drawing, and then passed back to the builder again for review. Again, there's no hand wave off of a particular piece of the project. Don't worry about that, we'll take care of it later. It doesn't happen. Everything is connected in terms of legalities, practicalities, time, cost, and quality at this nascent but very important stage. The builder does not like surprises, nor does the county licensing board. Last, there are the trades, short for tradesmen or subs, the worker bees. Finding, vetting, and negotiating with them is not the traditional role of the project owner with the vision, or the architect, the strategist. It is the operational role of the builder. Tangling with a sub does no good unless you get the attention of the builder. The architect is out of the picture regarding tactical problems on the job site. Important point. Moreover, the trades look to the builder to understand and plan. They do not pore over the architectural drawings on their own, if at all. So not only does the builder put reality into the lines and figures on paper coming from up higher, he is the experienced purveyor of who does what on the job, when, and at what cost. Without the builder, the whole process would be more complicated, costly, and time-consuming, with no guarantee of ever getting completed. So you see why the operational link in this time-honored process, in my opinion, is the critical link. Now, in our national level policy-making system, we neither have statutorily nor use this viable and proven construct de facto. We often have a nominally nationally stated vision, defeat ISIS. We propose a strategy of sort, disrupt, degrade, and destroy ISIS. And then we sort of, kinda, how's that for intellectual lingo, execute via processes that are anything but doctrinal or industry standard. We often work outside established systems and institutions, i.e. the current General Allen effort, as talented as he is. Finally, who actually executes the strategy and linkage to the relevant credentials are almost never primary considerations. This latter claim brings me to my second of 3 points for today. The nature of the people that conduct the very important business of our nation's national security. In short, America, we have a problem. To best bring this point home, let me propose a test with 3 questions. Hold your conclusions to the end of all 3. No pens, I don't intend to be punny here, but follow me, stay with me. There are several people in the room sitting around the table. A barber, an architect, a pilot, a builder, an accountant, a taxi driver, a neurosurgeon, okay, and a self-proclaimed national security expert. Of these at the table, future representatives here, which professions must have a license or permit to operate or seek employment in their vocation? Which professions are required from time to time to show proof of technical currency or adherence to new laws and regulations? Last, which professions are accountable for incompetency, consistent subpar performance, or dereliction of duty? I see the smiles. Not to be rhetorical or redundant, but their answer is the same for all 3. All professions but one must be trained, licensed, and are held accountable, with the exception being, I won't say it, I'll leave it up to you. The irony here, after 20-some plus years of doing this business, is a taxi driver has to go through an incredible, laborious process to be licensed, let alone employed. License doesn't equal employment. And a neurosurgeon's quest to practice takes many, many years. Both of their skills can never diminish, let alone suffer mishap, even once. Why then are there foundational differences for someone who works in the highest office of the land with responsibilities that ultimately can affect life and death? Moreover, returning to the business construction example outlined, there is no juxtaposition between professions in this field and the business field. A bricklayer does not do rough-in or finish framing. A cabinet maker does not do electric work, and a plumber does not do heating and ventilation. Ask them, they'll tell you. Okay. In our national security system, however, people are allowed to not only enter the system without formal credentials or training, but move from one hot issue to another without any thought to competency or fit. If the construction trades did this, a house would either never be completed, it would have rooms and floors that lead to nowhere, or it would eventually collapse. When you tie the 2 points together, a lack of a formal operational level component in our national security spectrum, coupled with a personnel system that is come one, come all without formal pedigree or accountability, it should become clear why before the United States government even embarks on a national security challenge, the odds are stacked against its success. And yet in other profession, this would be the case, clearly be the case. Let me then turn to my 3rd point for today. It's not directly connected to the first 2, but it's influenced by their structural shortcomings that I hope I've outlined. It too is directly relevant to fostering success prior to execution. Simply put, it is the inability or refusal to challenge long-standing assertions or primary assumptions. This one is not a small task. It's a class by itself. The Arab Spring will change the Middle East. Israelis and Palestinians both want a 2-state solution. The Berlin Wall will never fail, or fall, excuse me. The Russians would never cross into Georgia or Ukraine. Ebola is not a threat to the United States. And the new Iraqi army can handle ISIS. Really? Okay. Assumptions are the key in developing a plan and course of action, strategic or local, big or small. They must be developed before embarking on what to do about any given dilemma. Why? Without them, a plan must contain every possible contingency. Something that is not logical in a time or resource-constrained world, or in an administration with a political culture ADD. And I'm not singling out any administration. Assumptions guide and craft an effort at the same time and should never be set in stone. Even while a planning process continues, they should continually be challenged. If not, they become less of a guide and more of a self-fulfilling prophecy, the result of which binds one's mind, closes down. Once bound, adapting to realities does not occur. And forging success becomes a fleeting proposition, whether you want to admit it or not. In 2002, I was working in the office of the Vice President Cheney. I could clearly see where we were headed in terms of removing Saddam Hussein from power. That was a no-brainer. What was not yet clear, but continually voiced out loud in the office spaces, was that by removing Saddam, the gates would be open to democratizing not only Iraq, but also the greater Middle East. And henceforth, democracy would flow. I advocated that this linkage was an unsupported assumption, and that there was a lot more work to be done to even begin to think along these lines. Taking down Saddam, democratizing the Middle East. Let alone state them out loud as an expected natural course of events. The ensuing arguments were often heard in the hallway. In 2012, I co-authored a groundbreaking study chaired by Ambassador Tom Pickering regarding the practical dynamics to foster security for Israel and sovereignty for Palestine. Those are the two main dynamics. The study argued that the two time-honored fundamentals were not contradictory, as long as the U.S. was firmly in charge of the process and acted in its own interest. The U.S. acted in its own interest rather than being held hostage by the interests of the parties. The study was groundbreaking for two reasons. First, it was written from the perspective of the interest of the United States, i.e., this is what's in our interest to solve X problem. By such, we tackled the myth that one could not want peace more than the parties. We, the United States of America, oh yes we can. Second, and more importantly, we went the next steps by including how to realize a strategy. Without this, it would have been another paper, Middle East peace, read it, put it in the library, whatever. It would have been just like all the others. We developed an operational framework to bring the study to life. I was informed that General Allen's team used both the philosophy and operational framework during the course of the work. So we wrote a study, had all the strategic notices, all the writing, very well done, and then we took it to another level. All right, now how would we implement our own vision that we're stating here? Taking my 3 points together then, I fully realize today that my analysis is a critical one. But the business of national security is serious, deadly serious. It should not be a club or hobby for amateurs, a quest for a gold ring on a merry-go-round, or a notch on a belt. Given the trends of late, I find the exploration of the question of why the policy failures most imperative. If not dissected fairly and openly, I fear future results will be the same. The nation can neither afford this trend in terms of dollars or lives. Rather, as taxpayers and voting citizens of a democratic republic, assumption, we should demand that we get it right, if nothing else. So what can be done and where should we begin? Well, I believe that if America is truly the great, open, diversely educated country that the world, and we believe it to be, we do, then academia is the natural and viable place to begin. And X years before, I probably would have never said this, but I do believe it. It provides structural foundations, is why, primarily, and it should be free from the emotions and the politics of the issues. Hence, those two together make it a natural starting place. In concert, then, I believe Georgetown's SSP, given its academic charter, its experienced coalition staff, and geographic location, may be best suited for this endeavor. Being in Washington is a good thing. Earlier, I noted how keenly I remembered my time here due to access we had to policymakers. I thought it was really unique. In part due to classes in the Pentagon, which today you can no longer do, at least not easily. Access to policymakers is an important hallmark. But there's one more piece of the national security learning puzzle that could take the program even farther, and I think perhaps even ground setting. I thought during my time at Georgetown, and even more so today given my experiences, that the military's doctrinal concept of forging combined arms towards success bears relevance for national security strategy as well as the conduct of war, where it was born. In the military's concept, individual and unit training and expertise are necessary foundations. But it is the application and the synthesis at the right time of these expertise that provides the best chances for success in war. A bit simplified, it's team over self. Okay? One person's weaknesses offset by another's strength. Expertise of others supplements rather than challenges. Egos are aside in combined arms. A keen study of history shows that the proper application of combined arms, in concert with solid planning, almost always leads to success. Keeping in mind my point earlier about assumptions. Why can't this doctrinal model of warfare apply to the field of national security? I think it's feasible, and I think it's relevant. Implicit in combined arms are viable linkages, though, between the strategic, the operational, and tactical levels of warfare. So you have the expertise along the field. There has to be the viable links all the way throughout. Okay? So I offer today, why not add to SSP curriculum studies missing linkage of the operational level art and science towards forging effective U.S. foreign policy. The core focus would be to think through practically, put it on paper, put it on the wall like we've done, what it takes in terms of institutions, history, social and cultural norms, qualified personnel, etc., etc. You have to develop these yourself in order to forge the critical necessary linkages between vision, all the way out here, and making it happen on the ground. What are the institutional requirements? A beefed up embassy, a joint interagency task force, special envoy, as we do today. What qualities and experience for personnel are required? Political appointees, or certified licensed practitioner with decades of experience. And I'm not saying that no political appointees have a role. What are the proper balances between time, quality, and costs in this paradigm? And what role does leadership play, which I didn't go into here today? To foster both a realistic and ground-setting program, the curriculum will bring the real world front and center and not view it as an unwelcome interference to one's pre-held beliefs or academic expertise. This is very important. The real world counts. Ask any parent. Operational studies must challenge students to dig beyond the mainstream media, newspaper headlines, boutique blog sites, favorite pundits, and political party affiliations. Students would be encouraged to take up opposing positions, however distasteful. You don't get to write the paper on what you want to write about, necessarily all the time. Challenging the assertion will be the norm, not the exception. In concert, something along the lines of a red team center should be established. We talk a lot about that in the commands, in the places where we've been red team, but we don't do it very well, very often. Field trips, of course, are requisite, but not just to time-honored Gettysburg, which, however, does bear relevance in the operational field. I'm saying, but not just to Gettysburg. Visit Google. Go to a major construction site. I mean major construction site. An international shipping and transportation hub. Philadelphia, Newark, or the Panama Canal, where I just returned from, where they're building the second canal. You see how vast and large that is, and who's running that? How does that work? Study Metternich, Bismarck, Garibaldi, Ataturk, Ben Gurion, to view how to build modern nations against all odds. More contemporary, find and interview those who were on the ground in Afghanistan from 2002 to 2003, and Iraq from 2003 to 2004. Why? These first years were before the establishment of large bureaucratic hierarchies that ultimately developed in both of those theaters, where everything became very stovepiped and mother may I was 2003, 2004 Iraq. Individuals and units from these times were on their own or in small groups and navigating amazing successes. There was no one to ask. You went out and you did. One word of advice. Don't seek answers from the military, the NSC, or the U.S. government employees. The military suffers from a true lack of expertise at the operational level of warfare, regardless how often it is bannered about by those in uniform, honestly. To wit, ask a senior officer or war college student to name a true champion of the operational level of warfare from any historical period and not just from the United States. Or perhaps maybe even where this level of warfare became defined. The NSC loves to congeal around the hottest issue of the moment, like kids on a soccer field on a Saturday, and often believes it is their job to micromanage what the president wants, bringing forward Dermer's concept of the 5,000-mile screwdriver. But this esteemed body, where I have been, is more a contributor to the problem than help, and is too close to the dilemma at hand. Regarding the U.S. government, I was part of two major studies in 2007 in Iraq and 2009 at the NDU, National Defense University across the river. In both, a small group of us asked, it was not programmed, a small group of us came forth, and we asked to be able to put together the how-to. No matter the policy-making theses that we would come up with, more food, less guns, FSA, whatever, we said, that's fine. Let a small group say, fine, we'll take the policy recommendation and let us figure out how to put it into practice. We would focus on the practicalities that I outlined earlier and actually put boxes to charts and paper and names. On both occasions, when it came to brief the study's findings, only minimal time was allotted to the how-to. So the very large time for here's the policy, here's what we're going to do to win, but this much time was given, okay, how are we going to do it? And furthermore, none of the recommendations regarding practicalities were formally adopted on either study. Let me close by highlighting since graduation, I have had the fortunate experience to create a vision and bring it to reality in the conflict states of Israel and Iraq. I drew it on the board, and I went out and executed it, and I saw it happen. These efforts were, to say the least, incredibly dynamic. And they required the design and crafting of a strategy without benefit of precedent, finding the means and resources where there weren't any, and personally executing the effort, as I just stated. They were also very dangerous and emotionally grueling, and the emotional part is not over. I can tell you that much right now. More recently, I have attempted similar endeavors in Libya and regarding Syria, so far without success. So I know it can be done, and I personally vouch for the relevance of the thesis I offered today. Thanks again for the invitation. I look forward to your questions, and you are most welcome to challenge my assertions put forth. Thank you very much. Please.
Yeah, my name is Tola. I'm a graduate second-year student at SSP. And my question is whether you see these policy issues, the three issues you brought up, affecting both military and civilian policymakers both equally, or is it tend to be focused, you think, on, I think you mentioned the ADD of the civilian appointees?
Yeah, not just civilian appointees. ADD is a cultural problem. I mean, it's a cultural problem. We move. Ebola at the airport. Oh yeah, the Syrians, yeah, that's right. Is Libya still going? I mean, it's a cultural issue. In the military, I think it's a much better established foundation. Because of its natural chains of command. I mean, we don't have any argument from private to colonel and general who's in charge of what when. That said, trust me, we have our issues in working out complex issues in the military that's very busy, it's downsizing, and they can also get very locked in a particular belief. Look, Dave and I can tell you from many people that once they're onto something, they're on it, and moving them off of it or getting them to think outside of it is wow. And in this time frame that we're in, because things, for really my opinion, I look back to Panama where things just started to zoom off the charts. Special operations, we did a lot of stuff, but it was always, we were coming up dry a lot until Panama, and then after Panama we never stopped. So the nation as a whole has gotten involved in these back-to-back things, and I see that as needing much more broader mental license than smaller. But the military has a natural chain of command issue where it functions very well in a given time, but it does run up against its own walls, i.e. Iraq. Like right now, training equipment is not the issue in Iraq or Syria. But in this other side, the national policy making foundations out here, the same side, and it's off the charts. I mean, you know, the accountability issue is not small, because if you can pop in and pop out of a system and never have to pay a price for it, how far do you have to go, whether personally or operationally? It really doesn't matter. Even when you mean well. I mean, I'm not saying folks in these positions don't mean well, but at the end of the day, you can go home, or at the end of the day, you go to a think tank, or at the end of the day, you can start a business. No one ever calls you in the rug and say, what'd you about X? In the system, in uniform, you know, you're getting graded every step of the career all the way up the chain. And then when you hit the political echelon, like General Allen is now, that's really out there. But he's out of uniform now, so he'd be graded differently. In uniform, might act a bit differently. So it translates, but it translates to both. It's just not on equal signs. Please.
All right.
Don't let me off easy. That wasn't the answer. Let's keep going.
Well, okay. James Dickey. I'm just started here at SSP. But one of I think it's a great analysis on the problems at hand. The military is primarily responsible for that operational level. But I know from my own experience that doctrinally the Army says that hires assumptions are your facts from a planning point of view. And so arguing the assumptions of your higher headquarters, whether that is the next headquarters up or the National Security Council, gets you absolutely nowhere from an actual executing operations point of view. How do you suggest we deal with that when you find yourself as a practitioner at the operational level?
It's a great question. Jim, do I know you?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I just retired.
Okay.
Just retired, and yeah, I was a sort of a fail.
Okay. The first part of your question, I would disagree that operations is a level of military. If it's a military endeavor, military involved, you can say the operational level belongs to CENTCOM or AFCOM. You can say that. But the national security issue at hand does not necessarily mean the military is operational. That's my point here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, somebody has to be able to take things forth and not just hand it to the military. This is one of the problems why the militarization of our policy. I would argue it's not militarization policy, it's where is everybody else? Where was Ambassador Beecroft in Iraq the last 4 years when Maliki's running roughshod? And I know, I was out in Iraq doing business, small business, when Maliki's son showed up at our compound saying, we're taking all your stuff, you got to register. What? And I go to the embassy like, don't bother, we're busy. I mean, so, I'm not so sure the military is the operational chain. Now with your second part, yes, what I didn't address here today, which will surely be brought up, is some of the things I advocate take guts. Okay? They take guts and brains. When I was arguing in Vice President Cheney's office, I could not get to Cheney. I was dealing with others, I won't say names now, when you brought up before a thing. And they hired us. They had a small group of military guys in the office. It was 2 or 3. It was a very select assignment, so they said. And they specifically mentioned in our interview that we need folks that have operational experience. We don't want your stinking ideas. We don't need your damn ideology. We got that. What we need to do is someone that can look at us and go, is this doable or not? Well, when crunch time came and I saw the hand waves that were going to democratize the Middle East, I didn't disagree. I said, cool. All right, let's go. Let's rock. Let's go. I said, but how are we going to do this? This is a bit complicated. It'll happen. No, it won't. Trust me. I'll kill the guy that named the Arab Spring the Arab Spring. I swear to God, if I ever find him, I'll kill him. Or gal, I'll kill him. I mean, because when the first time I heard that, I said, that's bullshit. That's not going to, oops. I said, that's not going to happen. Arab Spring? You're kidding me. It's the Middle East. Get out of here. But it takes guts. And then, secondly, it has to come from the top down. The commander has to be like I just told you. All right, that's the plan. Assumptions are living. They're not dead. You're right. I agree with you 100%. This is the facts bearing on the problem. That's an assumption. No, it's fact. Came from the vision. Came from but from those that's been out there, from those of us that interlocuted with personalities from all over the world for many years, I don't think so. I just had the interesting time to live in Thailand the last 2 years while all that, whatever that's now called, was going on. And I couldn't help relating it to the Middle East. Because I learned by living in going to the store and going to physical therapy and going to the dock and running around down there that all the Thais were telling me no one believed in the system of the voting. They didn't believe it, not one. The neurosurgeon to the taxi driver. Of course, the embassy was all saying, this is an affront to democracy. And the Thais are saying, we don't believe in democracy. What else do you have? And the embassy, no, we believe it's democracy. Okay, so it has to be allowed to come from the top down as well. So I would argue that in a course that I advocate here, it would be unfair not to bring in realities at the end of the day. Like guts, like that. But you did hear me say social and cultural norms. It's very important. If America has ADD, get over it. Put it in the planning process, right? No, really. If you know you're going to turn left in a certain amount of weeks to the next crisis, then let's figure out how to do that. This is America. This is not
Saudi Arabia. We should be able to take the realities, program into solid foundations, and then get a direction. Now, then don't forget you run into something called politics, and I'm not arguing that. I will argue that how that plays in is a whole different story. Because you notice after an event happens several years down the road, people start popping up. Oh, this guy advocated at the time for X, and it was the right answer. And this think tank or foundation said we should do Y, and it was the right answer. Yeah, well, I mean, okay. All right, and what happened in between all that? It's valid, what happened in between all that. You know? And this administration, you have a president that is very close-hold. He doesn't come from that inner circle of Chicago types. Doesn't get freight for it until it has to. Okay, but that's a reality. It might be a bad way to govern, but it's a reality. So how do we plug a worthwhile something into that reality? Hard. I mean, I'd hate to be the one taking the final, but it's valid. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm going to take issue with what you had to say a little bit. I think that you relating, like, the operational level, like the vision, strategy, and everything, saying that that works on the military side and, like, as a construction person, that because it works there, it is going to work for the national security conglomerate, basically, that runs the United States. And I'm wondering if you can address kind of the complexity issue. I mean, because that's a huge issue. I mean, the military, they don't do anything simple, but their scope is very focused. Whereas the national security, you know, conglomerate is very huge and complex.
I didn't say it should fit. I asked the question, can it fit? I mean, why don't we look at fitting it in? I mean, some kind of construct, because you could argue against me, we don't do constructs. We talk the game, but up at that level, I got to tell you that the folks right now at the NSC are waiting for the military to give them the answer in Syria. And the military is saying, we don't have an answer in Syria, give us time. We don't have time, and the president wants an answer. No, I said it was a logical construct that I picked out. There's another one I didn't do, and it's writing a movie script, a Hollywood movie script. That's kind of more, I mean, people have a script. The script is a vision. They write it down. They take it to Hollywood. Someone gets interest. The movie that you see and the script was written, is it one and the same? No. For play? Nominally not. No. And then on scene, what happens? Things. We can't do that. You know. So the same kind of concept. So I basically was looking for a construct that America should look at rather than winging it and leaving it up to the political whims like we are now. I will tell you the construction thing that I laid out, concept. One would say design build. It would be called design build. And let me tell you, it's got its faults. It'll make you cry. Because I redid a house. I was in the War College in 2004-05. They called us the angry class at the National Defense University because we were the largest group to come out of combat to the NDU since Vietnam. So we all got to the NDU and thinking, wow, NDU. And they told us right off the bat, you're the largest class to come out of combat. We're like, great, we'll infuse this, we'll give you this, I don't think so. This is the NDU, this is what we do. And we're like, well, what do you do? Okay. So they call us the angry class because we were pushing back a little bit. The construction business that I outlined, I got to tell you, I built my addition at the same time I was in the War College. And man, that's when it really hit me. Because the guy said he'd show up, and he didn't. And I called the foreman, he goes, well, you know, these guys, you know, they get, no, you're in charge, you're in, do it. Then the architect, well, yeah, I gave you the right drawing, but Arlington came back, it didn't matter, it was painful. I mean, I didn't have PTSD then, I got it afterwards. And I'm building a basement today as we speak, and I'm going through the same stuff again. So even though I advocated for that construct, it's still, at the end of the day, it's the foreman, the guy with boots on the ground and the hard hat that looks upwards, the architect says, wow, and then tells the bricklayer, stop putting bricks over there, move them over there, okay? But that system also has to allow, in order to be valid, no different than the national security, to allow that up and down and feedback. If the architect, which is what I had several years ago, that's the way it is, that's why I drew it, I'm done with it. You can't be done with it, we have to have changes. And you know, well, if you pay me more, I'll do more drawings. Okay, I'll pay you more. So it has its issues, to be sure. But in terms of levels, I would say that once President Obama or President X says something, it really, how it everything gets done to me is mind-boggling, even when it's successful. I mean, I got to tell you, and using the Middle East peace construct, it's we keep bouncing the same assumptions for 20 years down the road, and we keep doing the same way, special envoy, special envoy. And if you knew anything behind the scenes about how these guys work, and they're all calling up, ooh, ooh, me, and what about me, and I wrote this book, and I wrote this paper, hey, my turn, my turn, my turn. Yeah, fine. Then you get appointed, they walk down the same road.
Mm-hmm.
Call up a bunch of bright people, they fly on airplanes, they land, they do meetings, they fail, and it's the only construct they're seeing where every time one fails, it's okay. Because it's the Middle East peace, so you can fail. That's not America. That's not what I spent my 20 years fighting the battlefield for. It should be, no, we're not failing, and this is what it's going to take. But, construction will do the same thing. The guy will come up to me and say, well, this is the way we do it in the industry. I said, yeah, but that's not the way I want it. It's the way we do it. So, again, it's got its issues. Amen. No, I just was advocating, how do we fix national security? And then here's a like thing. The movie script would have been sexier, but I didn't go there. Sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Steve Weber. I'm a student here in the program. I know when you're talking about, I guess, thinking operationally, I know you're talking about national security as a whole and not just the military.
Correct.
But within the military,
right.
How do we train and what kind of capacities do we need to kind of start developing? Like, how do we need to be thinking to be able to prepare, I guess, the military to handle what you're envisioning?
Well, again, as and the first question, we're a little bit farther along the education level of something called the operational level of the link. But there are those out there that will tell you, and I'm included because I'm not an expert in the operational level of warfare as it's written in doctrine, so period. I am very good at taking it up and making it happen, more along the line of the builder. We have it inculcated from the time we go to our basic courses, or we get the basic training, then we go to various levels of schooling. But really what you need is some kind of concomitant service service in a position to really bring it home. Now, unfortunately, there's a weakness in my argument, and it's part of it the military doesn't have it either. But two, I don't know how to bring to light, if I would do this course, you want to bring to light examples that are not military, right? Because we're not going down the military route. That's a class by itself that someone could teach, part of them. But most of the examples I can have to date are unfortunately military. At Gettysburg it would be the third day of the war. Zhukov from the Russians, Guderian from the Germans, Lydell Hart. I mean, that's unfortunate because that's how I've grown up and learned. How to transfer that to the other side is a question of itself, and that's why I brought you things like Ben Gurion, who really was the operational level architect of Israel. That's the fascinating story of Ben Gurion. Without him, the political would have never been connected to the rebels and the sand. They wouldn't have gotten there. Ben Gurion made it happen. I just gave this lecture to the Syrian Opposition Council, by the way, or the representative of Ben Gurion, and how I made it happen. But yeah, that's the transfer that needs to happen. The military guys, we get stuck on. We're very good at the shooting. I call it, we are tactical heroes. I mean, we got ribbons that poke you in the eye. But something at the strategic level, I would argue, and Dave can have different opinions, is a miss. We don't challenge and strike as hard at the strategic level as we do at the tactical level. We get very quiet. We get very reserved. We get, well, I'm military. That's not my lane. Well, to be honest with you, who goes first? Who's more dispersed in more places, doing more interlocution than anyone in the military? Who's in Ebola? I mean, who went to Liberia right now? Why the military? In the National Security Council, when I was there, I called it the give it to Mikey syndrome. Give it to the military. We don't have an answer, military. Okay, next issue. It's exactly how it happened. Well, we don't know. We're stuck on that part. Oh, yeah. CENTCOM, you got it next. Killing me, It's something that has to be worked out. But we are very good at dovetailing. Look, we built city councils. We built clinics out there. We did microfinancing of banks when we were out there. We built schools, and then we went into the schools. We had guys teaching at night. We had chaplains that were giving lectures. We had military health professionals. Come on. So really a better part or addition to your question would be how do we transfer that and get the national security system to take relevance of it rather than saying, which I've seen is your military, go back to your box. We're done with Petraeus. We're done with the great American Stan McChrystal. Well, yeah, but we did a whole lot of things out of uniform. Yeah, whatever. you're in the military, you don't have reason. So I asked the question earlier, 2011 we left Iraq, and we got Ambassador Steve Beecroft, I know very well. Well, what were you guys doing for the last 4 years? You say no militarization policy. You say you're back in your box, but that's fine. So what's missing? What's missing between the, what's missing? Because we did all that up until 2011. I was negotiating for the future of Solder City with a representative from Maliki's office and some solder guy. Just us three. Petraeus had given me a position. Well, diplomats were in there. I was doing it. And then I was reporting to diplomats. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hit it good enough? I got a little example there.
Oh, no, it's good.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Please.
Hi, I'm Matt Malaki, also a
Hi,
first
Matt.
semester student at SSP. Thank you for coming out. And I had a question about one of the few points you brought up about that. It wasn't sorry. Talking about how like the national security, people aren't very professional, that they're not licensed. This is kind of all the doors that you think essentially had, a staff of, like professional amateurs essentially. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I guess my question is like, given that we've kind of had that staff for decades now,
Right.
what's different now that's made that so problematic, and why hasn't that been problematic like previously, and why isn't that like problematic elsewhere?
I think it has been. I'm
Okay.
just bringing it to fore. Yeah, and it hit me in the face, not when I was on the national, at that level of vice president, but when I was in the field, particularly for Israel-Palestine, to be honest with you. That's when I came, my first tour in Israel-Palestine, I was an attaché, but I was a major. I was a Middle East guy, mostly pilot, but then Middle East guy. And I went in the embassy in Tel Aviv, and I saw how all these machinations were working for Middle East peace, or the vaunted Arab, whatever it was called. And I said to myself, this seems really odd the way we're going about the business. I mean, we're not sitting around, we're not vetting it out, we're not talking about the issues, we're not putting it down, we're not saying, okay, who can handle this, who can handle that. It's purely military concept at that time, purely. And I said, this is really whacked. Matter of fact, it was vicious. I thought it was vicious when I was up in OEOB. Oh, that was vicious. But this Middle East peace process with all the players was brutal. They were attacking each other more than the Israelis and the Palestinians were attacking each other, and still are. So that's when I began to see it. Then I went to the national level, and I said, surely, okay, this is it. I'm up here, and I'm in. And I was hired to be, the operational person that's been out in the MFO, that's been out in Damascus, that's been out in, Ethiopia, Eritrea for the war like I was. Okay, so, again, they want that link up. But then what I saw was just as I outlined today, it's just too easy and too simple, and people come from all walks of life, educated and bright and degrees and this and that, but there was nothing nothing cohesing it together. Okay, and I will admit, in the days of Vice President Cheney's early days, which I was in there, it was a big thing there at that time. Okay, I know I was part of that. One part I was in the office, so I felt it. But I could see that nobody nationally was running it. It's one of the ways that struck me odd that I could see right away was by everyone gets to use everyone's first name. The only person that's not addressed by their first name is the president. But it's Condi, Bryce, Steve, Hadley, PJ. Wow. I mean, it's someone has to drive, someone has to be in charge, someone has to organize, someone has to commit at the end of the day. That's what I'm arguing. And you're right, it's been there. But you know what? This is called challenging the assertion. This is challenging the assertion is what I'm doing. I say, come on, America. I know America can do better. When you're out in the Middle East, primarily where I am, and I told you what we talk about, America, what do they think we're playing possum? When it's serious, you're going to kick the crap out of the ISIS. We know it. We know it. You just, for some reason, you got something else going on. But you'll take care of them. I'm not. I hope so. I'm with you, man. I'd go back in uniform for that. You begin to wonder, they can't believe anything else. Why? Because we're the United States of America. You cannot make them believe anything else. That we cannot do it. So, as a learned individual and someone that's been out there, I'm trying to figure out come on. If we don't want to be successful, that's okay. That's our business for reasons they don't need to know about. But I can't imagine that being the case. I'm having trouble with that. So I'm calling it out. I'm calling it out. And I know it's hard. I know, changing a system. One of the two best classes I had here was the Studies of Systems and Institutions by Dr. Allard. He's still around me. The second one was Ambassador Kirkpatrick. May she rest in peace. She had a class called Cult and Culture of Personality. It's still here. And the most interesting thing about this school of thought was, we have in the news today, and the pundits in Washington will talk about an individual, Arafat, Abu Zuhairi, Mugabe, Jong-un from North Korea, Kim Jong-un. And what we don't do, and this is what Ambassador Kirkpatrick was about, is we don't take it and put it in a system. Dictators are dictators are brutal, repressive jerks are that. And they are for reasons, systematic. And then you can assess the individual. But the beauty of that class is, wait a minute, tyrannies do what tyrannies do what tyrannies do. So you can almost project, you can almost foretell, you can almost know what will happen next. Instead of Hyder Abadi is getting rid of Maliki's guys. Duh! You ever been in one of those environments? That's what they all do. No one can be around them. What have democratic institutions done? Thank you for your service. I don't need you anymore. Nope, you're not part of my administration. That's what systems do. So you don't have to say, well, he's doing it. No, of course he is. He's part of that system. He's one of those. Finally, sooner or later, someone's got to want to call the ball. And it's hard. It's hard. Even if we have like-minded folks, the next study becomes, and we studied this in Georgetown, is in how to change an institution. That's a kicker. It's a great study, but that's why there's so few. That's why there's, we did a lot of case studies when I was here. And case studies by various schools. And it really is enlightening. What? The more you study, you see trends. You see likenesses. So no matter what the subject matter is, you start to be, okay. But you have to get others to buy in with you. That's my problem. I'm always a vanguard, and I turn around, there's nobody there.
So, thinking more about trying to get the military out of being the only operational level folks. I mean, the problem is when you put together an operational planning team, and in an interagency environment, and you've got 10 people sitting around the table, the ones who actually get to make decisions are the one who brings something other than just ideas to the table.
Correct. Resources.
Yeah,
right.
and so generally my experience has been it's the military, okay, who's perfectly willing to listen to those good ideas, but ultimately he's the one who brings 95% of the resources, unless there's a USAID guy there who brings money, he can only through contracting. Nobody else around the table brings anything.
That's fair. That's very true. This is the great conundrum of the United States Department of State.
Yeah.
People like to put Holbrook on a pedestal, some of these other fellows. But sitting next to Holbrook was who at the table? Wes Clark. And what were the Croats doing at that time? The Croats were moving. They were winning. So it's not Holbrook's not great diplomatic skills, which I can't say yes or no. I don't know. But they're right. They're looking at the folks with the guns and the resources. But that's why I told you, if you can, you find the folks from 2002, 2003, Afghanistan, and 2003, 2004 Iraq. We were not, the military was wrapped up doing whatever. But I was part of building the Baghdad City Council. I was picked out of the hallway, someone grabbed me and said, hey, come over here, you want to do this? Okay, sure, whatever. And then it was a fascinating ride, because we developed, we did the whole thing. We needed labor. We needed labor because we needed to have elections throughout the city, quote unquote. Well, the very first comment at the table, it was the State Department guy running this thing, Andrew Morrison, if you can find him. Andrew, former 3-year enlisted guy, and then went in State Department. Knew Iraq, one of the few guys actually in the palace at the time that knew Iraq. So, well, we'll just get the military. And just like I just said, I leaped across the table, 11 o'clock at night, and I started choking. I was trying to beat him or something. I said, no, we're not. We're not using the military. You said, the nation said the military will take this guy down, okay? We're going to build democracy, and off we go. Well, where are the democracy builders? Well, and then the bus and the train, and they fright figures. We're not on the military. And after hours of argument at 3 o'clock in the morning in 100-degree heat, Andrew said, okay, Mr. Not military guy, what's your answer? Okay. I said, but, we have to lay it out very clearly. Responsibilities, why, what we want from them, and what it means for them to be doing. I mean, we're not going to task them with setting up elections all around the city of Baghdad, 88 neighborhoods. I mean, we're gonna put something together in writing, an operational plan, and we will hand it to the military. And they wholeheartedly loved it once we did it that way. But I was looking at him and saying, Andy, where's all the, who does this for a living? We don't do this. I don't know what this means. No, they weren't there. But within our group, I was the only military guy. So that was the other fascinating part. It got me in trouble with the military because I was running around in t-shirt and jeans, but you know, being a lieutenant colonel in front of a military audience, I'm like, great, one of these guys, you know. But the point I was making, I was the only military guy in the room this whole time, ending with from start to execution of actually setting up the city council in July. You know, I kept them other for labor from doing that. So it's there. I guess my point is it was there. And that's what I mean. People in the palace are doing all kinds of things. We had a great person in the Ministry of Education. We had a great person in the Ministry of Finance, civilians. So folks can do things. I know it's here. I know it's around. The question is, and you heard this argument, do we need a civilian something corps? Right.
Yeah, deputy, you know.
Yeah, you know, we got the military. What's the civilian equivalent? And does it count for military service? I mean, I think all those are worth revisiting. I think all those are valid points. Or guys like you that have been in and now out for different reasons are great to be in those kind of environments if you so decide. But you're bringing your military, more of your military planning. We don't want your mindset. We don't want your this. Because the things out there really, at the end of the day, are about relationships, which we never put a lot of money on. You know, the way we got things done was a little bit with the rifle, a little bit of the burgeoning, but my other successes have been by having relationships. To the detriment, I'm still getting emails as of yesterday from Iraqis and others for letters to get out of the country for asylum. And it's getting hard on me. But it's that relationship has kept, I mean, that's where you really begin to maneuver. And it doesn't take a military guy to do that. It really doesn't. Any of you guys know how to talk to you can do it.
You know, you talk, I mean, I think part of what you're getting at with your example is we need a better structured process in the national security process. And as we know, each president establishes his own national security apparatus because there's no mandated process. I'm wondering from your position if you saw it in the White House. In '97, President Clinton signed Presidential Decision Directive 56, which is the Management of Complex Contingency Operations, which was a process designed to really bring some structure to planning and really the operational level for all the interagency. And it was a very formal process, and I was involved in it as we wrote the first plans for North Korean instability and collapse. And the commander in Korea, after President Clinton signed it, he said, well, let's employ that for planning and get the interagency involved. And I saw it in action, and it was, in its nascent stages. There was value to it, but when the administration changed, of course that was, the last administration. And I know we had PD 25, but nothing ever really, to me, got to that level. And, one was that deliberately, anything but Clinton, or two, was there just no desire for establishing a process like that? And I guess three, would you advocate legislating, some kind of national security process to formalize it and standardize it?
On the first two, which are like, excuse me, yeah, I think it's such a personality-driven system at that level. I'm not saying others aren't, but at the presidential level, and there's a great study, you've done it, we've both done it. President has who have what around him. Kennedy worked very close. Clinton or Obama obviously works very close. Others, Clinton came in with the large people standing around all day with ideas. Yeah, that drives those two. The president's right to do things, it's well-meaning, but without another sort of guiding structure, which you're suggesting in the third point, right? The problem with that, I see, is dovetails right back to what I just said, and I would give you the War Powers Act. America, we are people. Those who've been overseas, they don't get us to save our souls. They just don't get us. And don't know how to explain this to them either. So I tell them, don't look at us, look at me. But no, it's a great study by itself. You know, PDDs, executive signature right, you stand by them all the way to the point where you don't want to, and then you can just woefully throw it away. We don't do that in the military. I'll tell you one place that we don't do it is in aviation. It's one of the things I love about being an aviator. You never do that. I mean, only at your own risk. Throw things out that are right in front of you on the checklist. Nah, I'm not doing it. No. Why at the national level that's the case, it's a great study. I also thought about arguing, advocating, yes, legislation to establish formally, and then you would have 10 slots at X, you'd have 15 at X in the National Security Council, you'd have 5, but you'd have to have an operational billet, you'd have to have literally almost like a design build team. So you're not allowed to produce anything at the NSC level unless you can functionally make it happen. That would be the most common sense thing, because like I said about bumper sticker strategies, which is why I get so angry and I don't go to many think tank briefings, but yeah, there has to be something, I think, at the end of the day, in order to ensure long-term driven capacity type success. I mean, I don't know what the other answer is, other than getting lucky, or you deploy the United States military and say, we've had enough of this, we're coming in. But we see where that gets us. You know, the great dilemma right now about what I define about ISIS, and I had this talk one time, I'll give you an example, is when you defeat ISIS, you get right back to the status quo out there. That's the strategy, should be not defeating ISIS, but how to get the Middle East to stop doing this, or how to get those in the Middle East to not let this happen. That's strategic thinking. Defeating ISIS is an operational stepping stone. But I don't know how to do the linkage that Dave wisely brought up in order to get this thing rolling, rather than every 4 years, all of a sudden, poof, here we go again. With other than a few, like Middle East Peace, which keeps doing the same thing going nowhere. It's a great catching, but it does take guts, it does take leadership. These are studies in of itself. And I think sometimes it takes a catastrophic event, which is how we got the 1947 National Security Act, which to me was a great thesis in the beginning, but to me, after serving on the Joint Staff, and today the Joint Staff has really gotten big. You know, it's a major promotion bill for people, but it's massive. And that doesn't mean that you have your ducks in order. A lot of those staff jobs that were mandated in order to get promoted, you don't really do a lot of things outside the box. For instance, if you're in J3, the operational billet, that's beautiful. You're figuring out how to hurt people. J5, where you're figuring out how to do strategy and figure out how to get someone to move left or right, that's brutal. That's hard to do. And I don't have the answer, but I do believe in academia, you should not be shy about tackling these issues. I really do believe in it. I believe in it highly. That someplace has to call the ball. You know, and without malice. Look, I've learned a lot about systems, and okay, maybe ours should be left or right, but without overdue malice about it. This is America. This is where the thinking belongs. And you can do none of what I've advocated and become Assistant Secretary of X in a few months. God bless you. I hope the best for you. But at the end of the day, those who have to put people in bad way or make people do hard things, it shouldn't be a secondary thought to the rest of the day. You know, but don't be. You know, I'm not against getting used. When I had Army on my shoulder, I'm like, no, this is going to suck to be us. But hey, that's what we have to do. You know, we do. When you sign up, you go, well, look, this is what we get. It's okay. But you being the country that we are, you would like to think that, okay, at least this is for something. It's the right thing. You know, we don't want to have the French mutinies of World War I on the battlefield, which I'm not advocating, but in our intellectual, you know, because I've seen the Army change. I came in '74 in the throes of Vietnam. When'd you come in there?
78.
78, throes of Vietnam. Oh my God, there was drugs and people were fighting and crying, and it was terrible. The service was weird. I was like hiding in corners in the daytime as a young soldier. And today, as Mr. Dickey brought up today, you get questions like this from the, you know, his first day in the service. He goes, sir, how about that national security? Hey, quiet, don't go there. But that's what you get now, and you can't be closed-minded and ill-trained and ill-educated to handle this kind of stuff. The old like, just do what I tell you has a little bit of a lesser connotation today at certain times. Please. Sir.
You mentioned that, kind of alluded to the fact that in the policy realm you don't think that specialization kind of matters anymore. I know there's been a move both in the intelligence community and also in OSD policy the kind of like policy is policy. Like it's okay that I was on Central Asia for 2 years and now I'm doing counter weapons of mass destruction and now I'm working on Latin American economy. Like policy is policy. Were that to revert back to some form of rewarding specialization, how do you prevent the specialization from leading to being a really rigid system or kind of stagnation of thought or stagnation of ideas?
Don't know. I have to throw some things out on the table while we're drinking beer.
I'll stick any suggestions of how to become an assistant secretary.
I can give you a number to call. Just let me come speak once in a while. No, really, it's really bad in the intelligence community. I mean, I started as an intel officer, and I'm not religious, I don't pray. But the day I left intelligence, I prayed. I was like, thank you, God. God, thank you. I won't ever do it again. No, I mean, you have to have some kind of perhaps reward, punishment regime. Not punishment as, but I mean, you have to, I would put someone in the field. I would juxtapose, one of the things I would argue is that if you're going to be in the building in the Pentagon, you got to get out somewhere as well. I like JIATAs, Joint Interagency Task Forces, as long as they're speaking good zone. You got to get out of the building. You have to be challenged. It's one thing to switch modes, economist to policymaker. I think that's ludicrous. But also in your own sphere, you have to be challenged, and I think that's the key. There's nothing wrong with coming out to academia, to Georgetown as a senior fellow, but studying, or other things. And you also have to go out to the field. I mean, you really want to take time to go out to the field, and then show it when you come back. Show it. Okay, don't come back being this, unless it works, unless you can prove your case is right, then it's right. But show it. And I'm just thinking off the top of my head, because that's exactly what happens. I mean, we get, us specialties, Dave is SF, I'm an aviator, and a Middle East guy. We get put into categories by our own service. I mean, I tell you, as an aviator, when we first came in, I was never allowed to wear a flight suit. It was verboten, taboo. Don't wear a flight suit when you're not flying. Why? An aviator? No one likes aviators because you're the whatever. Okay, and that even continues today. We have changed our uniform to look as much like ground guys. Okay, is this better now? So you have to be able to get out of your system. And we like to put, guys hated it, we like to put aviators in positions of ground positions where they'd be liaison officers. And that's a great thing I've learned. They hated it because they're not flying and they're having to explain why a helicopter doesn't do barrel rolls and doesn't pull 16 G's. And the guy you're talking to just got 5 seconds to get you to listen to you. But it was good putting you out of your warm place. So if you're a policy guy doing economics for 25, whatever years, go put that guy in another place. I don't care where it is, or gal. CIA, Treasury, China, put them out. Take them out of their comfort zone. And if the personality goes with it, you should at the end of the day get a long-term better product. There's nothing wrong with being an expert in your field as long as you're willing to say, yeah, to a point. Like, I hate the term expert for Middle East experts. There's no such thing in the Middle East. They don't even understand themselves. One of the gigs I just got asked to do was like explain Iranian ideology. I said, no. They can't explain it. When they can explain it, I'll explain it. I'm not going to stand up there and explain that. I'm sorry. But that's what they want. That's what they want to be briefed on for an hour and a half. I'm not your guy, unfortunately. Sorry.
I mean, intellectually, don't you think that to some degree think tanks maybe at least used to kind of form that area where if free your oppositional thinking isn't allowed in the system, either be it for political concerns or just because of inertia, you could go out to the field or go. I mean, the footprint of the RAND Corporation in Saigon in Vietnam was significant.
Right.
Is there still room for that, or is it just gotten so highly politicized that you have to be in and find someone who's willing to send you somewhere, which means you're probably not that good, because if you're good, why would they send you away?
Don't know about the latter point, but I think there needs to be a better balance and then stop thinking that the think tanks have it. The questions I would pose to students is fine, great lecture, heard the thesis, love the talk. Now show me. Show me. How do we do this? And who's responsible? It's not fair to keep putting forth things, I believe. Although, look, in terms of democratic nature of our country, say what you will, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. But somewhere along the line, when it's time to get serious, how? And watch everyone button up. How? And then who would be responsible for this? And if they didn't succeed, what would happen? Okay, are we putting you in there given that we never succeeded, so what the hell? Or are we putting you in there that we're tired of not succeeding and this is successful, or you know what? Habibi, you can open up a cafe somewhere and I hope you do well. Yeah, no malice. Trust me, it's hard. But come on already. It's too much thrown out there. Obama messed up this. Bush didn't have it right. The Iraqis are putzes, they'll never get it right. Okay, so how, Bob? Talk to me, how? What does it take? And stop giving me platitudes and stop telling me things that I can look up with a different date and time and see the same error. You know, how do you do this? Don't tell me you're a do tank. If I hear that again, I'm going to go high and right. You know, show me. You know, and you know how things like how dare you have the day after for the Syrian opposition, the USIP several years ago, and not have anyone in that entire group from a security portfolio. Okay, that thing was totally divorced from anything in the world. That's not fair. That's not right. I'm glad you get paid for it. Don't get me wrong. You know, but come on. If I saw that at this venue, I'd say, next, get away from me. You know, it's all gone now. It's defunct, as you well know. Totally. We made it defunct, policy-wise, and then, of course, it just fell apart. Come on, guys. How are you going to do this? And how can you not have a security portfolio when inside the guys with guns are fighting for their lives? And something's, you know. No, fair question, but I think it's time to narrow the field a little bit, to call the field. Not too much, because then you end up getting the bright guy that had one good idea and you keep going back to him or her. That's a danger as well. Honestly, I've fallen into that same trap, to be honest with you. I have. I got called up, figured I can handle it. I shouldn't have opened my mouth. You know, but I was caught up in it. I was like, cool, I shouldn't have done that. That's a paper we can do next week. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Hijab Shah. I'm a first-year student here at the Security Studies program. My question for you is regarding kind of the role of you know, so-called experts here. I mean, I worked for a think tank, and it surprised me to know, and I'm not American, so for me it was coming in from the outside, that the heads of every regional security program are, for a lack of better explanation, old white dudes. How do you, and the thing is that culture is maintained throughout the DC policy community, as far as I can tell. How do you change that?
I can't go there. I wish I knew. The more back to support your question, to tie the two together, I would have an operational part to my think tank. Like, okay, this is the big guy. That's fine. God bless you. Congratulations. But then the next, break it down. This is what we propose and break it down. I don't think you'd get a lot of old white guys there, is my thinking. But in fairness to your overall question, good question, because I bump into it all the time. I mean, to be honest with you, the word operator, as Dave described me, it ripples. And you know, it ripples like, uh-oh, an operator. Uh-oh. I mean, just here to listen, you know. But no, good question, but I don't know. I see a lot of, yeah. I guess I see a lot of diversity, but not at certain levels. You know.
You see some here, and 341 students in our program, 43% are women. So we're going to start.
From other nations, I see a lot of them. Yeah.
We're going to start seeing not a lot of old white dudes running things in the future.
Which
all the students here will be.
One of the other dilemmas you can roll in with this if you want to say. One of the things I caution people against is a good friend of mine. She's the wife of a just former ambassador. I won't give you which country. But she's been calling in, using her former position, people that she met as an ambassador's wife. She's been calling in women from that country and having seminars here in the States, kind of pushing them to step out. And I asked her, I said, I wouldn't do that if I were you. If you want to maintain friendships, please. But you're asking someone to do something that the minute they step off a plane in their country is just not doable. And they should not necessarily be the vanguard, unless they so choose so. I mean, okay, if you want to step off the plane and start wanting to drive in, like, say, Saudi Arabia, go for it. But for a former person that high, and her husband's now at a very prestigious think tank, quote unquote, you know, I'd be very careful about that. You know, proffering something that in cultural bounds would not happen. And if you were with her, or someone in that country was with her, I would argue they would step up and say, thank you, we enjoy your dinners, we appreciate that. But someone has to give her a reality check, and only can come from someone of that culture. You know, we push folks a lot from other cultures to do things that never dream of, let alone be supported. And one of the things I have to live with is, although involved in direct killing and once upon a time, I now struggle with the number of people that I've gotten killed, that I put in harm's way because of just that. Saying, you gotta do this, it's good for you, it'll change your country, the whole thing. And I didn't understand at the time, they only came forth because of me, not because of what I was selling. I did not understand that dynamic. So it takes someone, I would argue, that should be involved in these centers of that, and she's not in a center yet, but she's moving towards a think tank, to getting employed by a think tank. I said, you cannot take that to a think tank. You know, I would be very arguable with you, as she's white, you know, mature old white woman, and someone doesn't come up to you in the hallway and say, you know, you're almost being destructive here. You're hurting people because they believe you as an American former high-level official that you are kind of more than what you're saying in the dining room. You're a former ex. So are you espousing policy? Is this something to do? It's very dangerous. Very dangerous. Good luck. Okay. Thanks for your time.
I think we're at about time here. So, PJ, on behalf of your alma mater here, thank you for returning and giving us your insights. And so I'd ask everybody to join me in a round of applause.